The blood on Clara Hawthorne's knuckles mixed with the soapy water as she scrubbed the saloon floor for the third time that evening, her raw hands trembling with exhaustion while her stomach growled from missing yet another meal. She had been working at the Silver Spur Saloon in Paso Robles, California, for nearly 2 years now, ever since her father died from consumption and left her with nothing but debts and the clothes on her back. It was 1882, and opportunities for a woman alone in this rough town were scarce as water in August. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the grimy windows as Clara dipped her brush into the bucket again, ignoring the burning sensation that shot through her palms. The floor was already clean, but Mr. Donnelly, the saloon owner, had found a single spot he claimed was dirty and ordered her to start over. She knew the truth. He enjoyed watching her suffer, enjoyed the power he held over her. With nowhere else to go and no family to turn to, Clara was trapped in this cycle of endless work, meager pay, and constant humiliation. "You missed a spot over there," came a gruff voice from behind the bar. Mr. Donnelly's beady eyes watched her like a hawk circling prey. "And when you are done, the upstairs rooms need fresh linens." Mrs. Patterson complained about the state of her room. Clara nodded without looking up, pushing a strand of her dark chestnut hair behind her ear with her forearm, careful not to touch her face with her raw, reddened hands. She was 22 years old but felt decades older. The constant work had stolen the light from her hazel eyes and put permanent lines of worry across her forehead. The saloon doors swung open, bringing with them a gust of warm California air and the silhouette of a tall man. Clara glanced up briefly, then returned to her scrubbing. Cowboys came and went all day long. This one was probably no different. "Whiskey," the man said, his voice deep and smooth like honey. "The good stuff, if you have it." "We got whiskey," Mr. Donnelly replied. "Good enough for anyone who walks through those doors." Clara heard the clink of a glass and the splash of liquid. She continued scrubbing, moving backward across the floor, her knees aching against the hard wood. Her dress, a faded brown thing that had seen better days, was soaked at the hem and clung uncomfortably to her legs. "That girl working for you?" the cowboy asked. "The floor scrubber?" "Yeah, that is Clara. Why, you interested?" Mr. Donnelly's laugh was crude. "She is not that kind of worker, if you catch my meaning, just cleaning and serving." "I was not asking for that reason," the cowboy said, his tone cooling. "I was wondering why she is scrubbing a floor that looks perfectly clean to me." Clara's hand stilled for a moment. Nobody had ever questioned Mr. Donnelly's orders before. She risked another glance at the stranger. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of a summer sky. He wore typical cowboy attire, dusty from travel, a gun belt hanging low on his hips, but something about the way he carried himself suggested he was more than just another drifter. "I pay her. I decide what work she does," Mr. Donnelly said defensively. "Now, are you here to drink or ask questions about my employees?" The cowboy took a slow sip of his whiskey, never taking his eyes off Mr. Donnelly. "Just making conversation. This is a free country last I checked." Clara returned to her work, her heart beating faster. She should not have allowed herself even a moment of hope. Men like that cowboy did not concern themselves with women like her for long. He would drink his whiskey, maybe play some cards, and ride out of town. That was how it always went. The evening crowd began to filter in as the sun dipped below the horizon. Clara finished the floor and moved to serving drinks, balancing trays despite the pain in her hands. Every time she set down a glass or picked up empty bottles, her raw skin screamed in protest, but she kept her face neutral. Showing weakness only invited more cruelty. The tall cowboy stayed at the bar, nursing his whiskey and watching the room with an observant eye. Clara felt his gaze on her several times as she worked, but she refused to meet it. Getting involved with customers, even in the most innocent way, was forbidden. Mr. Donnelly had made that clear when she first started. Any friendliness beyond what was required for service would result in immediate termination. "Girl, bring me another bottle," a rough-looking man at a corner table shouted, slamming his fist down. His companions laughed, already well into their cups. Clara hurried over with a fresh bottle, setting it down quickly and turning to leave. A hand grabbed her wrist, and she gasped as dirty fingernails dug into her already damaged skin. "Not so fast, sweetheart. Why don't you stay and keep us company for a while?" "I have work to do, sir," Clara said quietly, trying to pull her arm free without causing a scene. "I said stay," the man growled, yanking her down toward him. The smell of alcohol on his breath made her stomach turn. "The lady said she has work to do." The cowboy's voice cut through the noise of the saloon like a knife. He had moved from the bar without Clara noticing and now stood beside their table, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. The drunk man looked up, his eyes narrowing. "This is none of your business, stranger." "I am making it my business," the cowboy replied calmly. "Let her go." For a tense moment, Clara thought violence would erupt. The drunk man's companions reached for their own weapons, and the entire saloon seemed to hold its breath. Then, perhaps recognizing something dangerous in the cowboy's steady gaze, the drunk man released Clara's wrist with a shove that nearly sent her sprawling. "She is not worth the trouble anyway," he muttered. The cowboy caught Clara's elbow, steadying her. His touch was gentle, completely unlike the rough treatment she was accustomed to. "You all right, miss?" Clara nodded, pulling her arm back and cradling her injured wrist against her chest. "Thank you, but I can handle myself." "I can see that," he said, and there was no mockery in his tone. "But sometimes it helps to have backup." Before Clara could respond, Mr. Donnelly appeared, his face red with anger. "What is going on here? Clara, get back to work, and you," he jabbed a finger at the cowboy, "I do not need troublemakers in my establishment." "I was not making trouble." "I was preventing it," the cowboy said. "I don't care. You interfere with my customers again and you are out." "Clara Kitchen." Now, Clara hurried away, her face burning with embarrassment and something else she could not quite name. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall and examined her wrist. It was already bruising, dark marks in the shape of fingers standing out against her pale skin. She dipped her hands in the wash basin, biting her lip against the sting. "You should put something on those." Clara spun around. The cowboy stood in the kitchen doorway, his hat in his hands. Up close, she could see the concern in his blue eyes, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hair curled slightly at the ends. "You should not be back here," Clara whispered urgently. "If Mr. Donnelly finds you, I will lose my position. He is busy with the card game. Nobody saw me slip back." The cowboy stepped closer, setting his hat on the counter. "My name is Zachary Nichols. My friends call me Zach. I am Clara Hawthorne, but you already know that." She turned back to the basin, hoping he would take the hint and leave. Instead, she heard him move closer. "Let me see your hands. They are fine." "No, they are not. Please, Clara, let me see." Something in his voice made her turn around. She reluctantly held out her hands, palms up. In the lamplight of the kitchen, they looked even worse than she had thought. The skin was cracked and bleeding in places, red and inflamed from constant exposure to harsh soap and water. Zachary's jaw tightened as he examined them. He did not touch her, but she could feel the anger radiating off him. "How long have they been like this?" "A while," Clara admitted. "The work is hard and Mr. Donnelly insists on the strongest soap. He says it is the only way to get things properly clean." "This is not right," Zachary said quietly. "You should not be treated this way." Clara pulled her hands back, curling them into fists despite the pain. "It is none of your concern, Mr. Nichols. I appreciate your help earlier, but I do not need charity or pity. This is my life, and I manage it as best I can." What if it did not have to be? The question hung in the air between them. Clara stared at him, unsure she had heard correctly. "What do you mean?" Before Zachary could answer, the kitchen door slammed open. Mr. Donnelly stood there, his face purple with rage. "I knew it. You conniving little witch trying to steal away with a customer. Get out, you are fired." "No, wait," Zachary started, but Mr. Donnelly was not listening. "Out now, and don't expect any of the wages I owe you. Consider it payment for the food you have stolen over the months." "I never stole anything," Clara protested, her voice shaking. She had been so careful, so diligent. This job, horrible as it was, represented her only means of survival. "I don't care. Get your things and get out of my saloon." Clara's mind raced. She had no savings, no family, nowhere to go. The small room she rented above the general store was paid through the end of the week, but after that she would be on the street. Panic clawed at her throat, making it hard to breathe. "She is coming with me," Zachary said firmly. Both Clara and Mr. Donnelly turned to stare at him. "What?" Mr. Donnelly sputtered. "I said she is coming with me. Clara, get your things. Whatever you have here, gather it up." "I don't have anything here," Clara said faintly. "Just my shawl." Zachary reached over and grabbed the worn shawl hanging on a hook near the door. He draped it carefully over Clara's shoulders, his hands gentle. "Then we are done here." "Now hold on just a minute," Mr. Donnelly said, stepping in front of the door. "You can't just waltz in here and steal my employee." "You just fired her," Zachary pointed out. "She is no longer your employee, and I am not stealing anyone. I am offering her a choice. Clara, do you want to stay here or do you want to leave with me?" Clara looked between the two men. Common sense told her that leaving with a stranger was dangerous and foolish. But staying meant sleeping on the street come week's end. And something about Zachary Nichols, something in his steady gaze and the gentleness he had shown, made her want to trust him. "I will go with you," she said quietly. Mr. Donnelly started to protest, but Zachary cut him off. "Step aside." There must have been something in his tone because Mr. Donnelly moved. Zachary placed a hand on the small of Clara's back, guiding her through the saloon. Every eye in the place watched them leave. Clara kept her head high, even as her knees trembled and her heart hammered against her ribs. Outside, the evening air was warm and filled with the sounds of Paso Robles settling into night. Horses lined the hitching posts, and music drifted from various establishments up and down the street. Zachary led her to a beautiful buckskin horse with intelligent dark eyes. "This is Copper," Zachary said, stroking the horse's neck. "He is gentle as a lamb. Have you ridden before?" "A few times when I was younger," Clara admitted, "before my father got sick." Zachary nodded, then surprised her by removing his jacket and holding it out. "Put this on. The nights get cold. I have my shawl. The shawl has more holes than fabric. Please take the jacket." Clara accepted it, slipping her arms into the sleeves. It was far too large for her, but it was warm and smelled like leather and something woodsy she could not quite place. Zachary swung up into the saddle with easy grace, then reached down for her. "Where are we going?" Clara asked, even as she took his hand and allowed him to pull her up behind him. "Somewhere safe," Zachary promised. "Hold on to me. I won't let you fall." Clara wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her damaged hands. As Copper started forward at an easy walk, she allowed herself to rest her cheek against Zachary's back. For the first time in 2 years, she felt something that might have been hope. They rode through the town and out into the open land beyond. The moon was nearly full, painting the landscape in shades of silver and shadow. Clara watched the familiar buildings of Paso Robles disappear behind them and wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. "There is a ranch about 5 miles from town," Zachary said over his shoulder. "The Rocking Inn. It belongs to my family. My father, Nathan Nichols, runs it with my 2 brothers and me. We have a housekeeper, Mrs. Jenkins, who is getting on in years and could use help. If you are willing to work, you will have a place to stay, regular meals, and fair wages." "Why are you doing this?" Clara asked. "You don't know me." Zachary was quiet for a moment. "My mother died when I was 12. She worked herself to death trying to keep the ranch going when my father was injured in a riding accident. I watched her hands get more and more damaged, saw her get thinner and more tired, and I could not do anything to help because I was just a kid. When I saw your hands tonight, when I saw how that man treated you, I knew I could not just walk away." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "I am sorry about your mother. So am I. But maybe I can make sure another woman does not have to suffer the way she did, the way you have been suffering." They rode in silence for a while, the steady rhythm of Copper's hooves on the dirt road soothing. Clara's body ached from the long day of work, and the warmth of Zachary's body in front of her made her drowsy. She caught herself nodding off several times, jerking awake with a start. "It is all right," Zachary said softly. "Rest if you need to, I have got you." Clara finally gave in, letting her eyes close and her body relax against him. She drifted in and out of awareness, catching glimpses of the moonlit landscape and the steady rise and fall of Zachary's breathing. When Copper finally stopped, Clara blinked awake to find them in front of a large ranch house. Lamplight glowed in the windows, and she could see the shapes of barns and outbuildings in the moonlight. Dogs began barking, and the front door opened. "Zach, that you?" a man's voice called out. "Yeah, Pa. I have brought someone who needs our help." Zachary dismounted, then reached up to help Clara down. Her legs were stiff from the ride, and she stumbled. He caught her easily, steadying her until she found her balance. An older man stepped out onto the porch, followed by 2 younger men who looked enough like Zachary to clearly be his brothers. All 3 men stopped when they saw Clara. "This is Clara Hawthorne," Zachary said. "She was working at the Silver Spur in town under some pretty bad conditions. I thought maybe she could help Mrs. Jenkins around the house." Nathan Nichols was a tall, weathered man with gray threading through his dark hair. He looked Clara over with sharp eyes that missed nothing, including her raw hands and the bruises on her wrist. His expression softened. "Mrs. Jenkins has been saying she needs help," he said. "Come on inside, Miss Hawthorne. You look about done in." Clara followed them into the house, overwhelmed by the warmth and light. The interior was rustic but well-maintained, with sturdy furniture and Navajo rugs on the wooden floors. A plump woman with silver hair appeared from what Clara assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Zachary, you are back, and you have brought a guest, I see. Mrs. Jenkins, this is Clara Hawthorne. I was hoping we might have room for her to stay. She is looking for work. Mrs. Jenkins took one look at Clara and immediately went into a motherly mode that made Clara's throat tighten with longing. "The poor dear looks exhausted. Come here, child. Let me get you some food and hot tea. When was the last time you ate a proper meal?" "This morning, madam," Clara admitted, though in truth it had been a stale biscuit she had managed to snatch between tasks. "This morning. Zachary Nichols, bring her into the kitchen this instant. The rest of you men give us some space. This girl needs tending to." The men scattered, though Clara caught Zachary glancing back at her with concern before his father steered him away. Mrs. Jenkins guided Clara to a chair at the large kitchen table and immediately began bustling about, heating food and putting a kettle on for tea. "Now then, let me see those hands," Mrs. Jenkins said, settling into the chair beside Clara. Clara hesitantly held them out, and Mrs. Jenkins made a disapproving sound. "How long have they been in this state?" "A few months, madam. The work was hard and the soap was strong." "The work was abuse, more like," Mrs. Jenkins said firmly. "Don't you worry, dear. We will get you fixed up. I've got a salve that will help, and we will keep them bandaged for a few days. No heavy work for you until these heal properly." "But if I am to work here," Clara started. "You will work when you are able and not before. The Nichols family are good people, child. They won't work you to death like that horrible man in town clearly was trying to do." Mrs. Jenkins got up and retrieved a jar from a shelf, along with clean bandages. "This is going to sting a bit at first, but then it will start to feel better. My grandmother taught me how to make it, and it has never failed me yet." As Mrs. Jenkins gently cleaned and treated Clara's hands, applying the cool salve and wrapping them in soft bandages, Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She could not remember the last time someone had been so gentle with her, so caring. "There now," Mrs. Jenkins said, patting Clara's arm. "That is better already, is not it? Now, let us get some food in you. I have got beef stew still warm and fresh bread from this afternoon." The meal Mrs. Jenkins placed in front of Clara was the most food she had seen in months. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, while Mrs. Jenkins kept up a steady stream of comfortable chatter about the ranch, the Nichols family, and life in the area. "Mr. Nichols has 3 sons," Mrs. Jenkins explained. "Zachary is the middle one. The oldest is Marcus. He is 26 and handles most of the horse training. The youngest is Samuel, 20 years old, and he is learning the business side of things. Zachary, now, he is the one who handles the cattle drives and manages the ranch hands. All 3 are good boys, even if they are grown men now." "How long have you worked here?" Clara asked. "Going on 15 years now. I came after Mrs. Nichols passed, God rest her soul. Mr. Nichols needed someone to help with the boys and the house, and I needed a place to go after my husband died. It has been a good arrangement. This family took me in when I needed them, just like they are taking you in now." After Clara finished eating, Mrs. Jenkins showed her to a small bedroom on the 2nd floor. It was simple but clean, with a real bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the ranch yard. "This used to be the sewing room," Mrs. Jenkins explained, "but we do not need it for that anymore. It will be your room now if you decide to stay. Tomorrow we will talk about wages and duties and all that. Tonight, you just rest. There is a nightgown in the dresser that should fit you well enough. Sleep as long as you need. Breakfast is not until 7, but I will save you a plate if you sleep longer." After Mrs. Jenkins left, Clara stood in the middle of the room, almost afraid to believe this was real. She changed into the nightgown, which was soft cotton and far finer than anything she had worn in years. When she finally crawled into the bed, the mattress was so comfortable compared to the thin pallet she had been sleeping on that she almost cried again. She thought she would lie awake worrying about everything that had happened, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. Her last conscious thought was of Zachary's gentle touch as he steadied her, and his promise that she was somewhere safe. Clara woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee drifting up from below. For a confused moment, she thought she had overslept at the saloon and would be punished. Then memory returned and she sat up, looking around the small room in wonder. It had not been a dream. Her hands still ached, but when she unwrapped the bandages to examine them, they already looked better. The angry redness had faded somewhat, and the cracks were not as deep. Mrs. Jenkins's salve was clearly working. Clara found a pitcher of fresh water on the washstand and cleaned herself as best she could, painfully aware of how shabby her dress looked in the light of day. It was the only one she owned. She rewrapped her hands, though less tightly so she could use them, and made her way downstairs. Voices came from the kitchen, masculine and friendly. Clara hesitated in the doorway, suddenly nervous. Zachary sat at the table with his two brothers, all three of them digging into enormous plates of eggs, bacon, and potatoes. Nathan Nichols sat at the head of the table reading a newspaper. They all looked up when Clara appeared. "Good morning," Zachary said, smiling at her. In the daylight, he was even more handsome than she had realized. "How did you sleep?" "Very well, thank you," Clara replied. She noticed all three brothers had stood when she entered, a courtesy she had not experienced in so long she had almost forgotten it existed. "Sit down, child," Mrs. Jenkins said, appearing with another plate. "The men were just finishing up. They have work to do and we have work of our own. But first, you eat." Clara sat, and Mrs. Jenkins placed a plate in front of her that held more food than she typically ate in 2 days. The brothers finished their meals and filed out, Marcus and Samuel nodding politely to her. Zachary paused by her chair. "If you need anything, just ask Mrs. Jenkins or my father. I will be out with the cattle most of the day, but I will check in this evening to see how you are settling in." "Thank you," Clara said softly, "for everything." Zachary's smile was warm. "You are welcome. I am glad you are here." After the men left, Clara ate while Mrs. Jenkins explained the household routine. The work was straightforward: cooking, cleaning, laundry, mending, and general household management. Nothing Clara had not done before, and Mrs. Jenkins emphasized that they would split the duties fairly. "Your hands need time to heal, Mrs. Jenkins said firmly when Clara protested that she should pull her weight. "We will start you on light tasks. Today, maybe you could help me with some mending. It is something you can do sitting down and it will not strain your hands too much." They spent the morning in the comfortable parlor, mending shirts and trousers. Mrs. Jenkins kept up a steady conversation, telling Clara about the ranch, the family, and the surrounding area. Clara learned that the Rocking Inn was one of the more successful ranches in the region, running about 500 head of cattle and breeding quality horses on the side. The Nichols family came to California during the gold rush, Mrs. Jenkins explained, but Nathan was smart enough to realize the real money was in feeding the miners, not mining himself. He started the ranch with his father, built it up from nothing. Now it is one of the best operations in this part of the state. As they worked, Clara found herself relaxing in a way she had not in years. Mrs. Jenkins was easy company, neither demanding nor cruel. The house was peaceful, filled with the comfortable sounds of daily life. At noon, they prepared lunch, and the men came in from the range. They gathered around the kitchen table, and Clara helped serve the meal. She noticed Zachary watching her, his eyes tracking to her bandaged hands several times with a concerned expression. "How are you feeling?" he asked as she set a plate in front of him. "Much better, thank you. Mrs. Jenkins has been taking good care of me." "That is good. That is real good." The way he looked at her made Clara's heart beat faster. She quickly turned away, unsure what to make of the warm feeling spreading through her chest. The days began to fall into a comfortable pattern. Clara's hands slowly healed under Mrs. Jenkins's careful treatment. She took on more duties around the house, but never to the point of exhaustion she had experienced at the saloon. The work was hard but fair, and for the first time in years, Clara felt like she was living rather than just surviving. The Nichols family treated her with respect and kindness. Nathan was gruff but fair, often complimenting her cooking or thanking her for keeping the house in order. Marcus was quiet and spent most of his time with the horses, but he was always polite. Samuel was the most talkative of the brothers, full of stories and jokes that made even Mrs. Jenkins laugh. But it was Zachary who occupied Clara's thoughts more and more as the weeks passed. He went out of his way to check on her, to make sure she was settling in well. He brought her wildflowers he found on the range, small bright blooms that she put in a jar by her window. He asked about her past, her family, her dreams, and he listened when she talked with an attention that made her feel truly seen. Clara tried to guard her heart. She told herself that Zachary was simply being kind, that his interest was that of an employer ensuring his employee was content. But the way he looked at her, the way his hand would linger when he helped her with a heavy pot, or steadied her when she climbed a ladder to dust the high shelves, suggested something more. One evening, about a month after Clara had arrived at the ranch, Zachary found her sitting on the porch after dinner. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Clara had her mending basket beside her, though she was taking a break to watch the beautiful sunset. "Mind if I join you?" Zachary asked. "Of course not. It is your porch." Zachary settled into the chair beside her, stretching out his long legs. He had clearly just washed up, his dark hair still damp, his face clean-shaven. Clara caught herself admiring the strong line of his jaw and quickly looked away. "Your hands are looking much better," Zachary observed. Clara held them up, examining them in the fading light. The raw, cracked skin had healed, leaving them pink and new-looking but whole. "Mrs. Jenkins's salve worked wonders. I can hardly believe the difference." "I can," Zachary said quietly. He reached over and gently took one of her hands in his, cradling it carefully as he examined it. His touch was warm, his calloused fingers gentle against her newly healed skin. "You should never have had to suffer like that. No one should." Clara's breath caught. She knew she should pull her hand away, should maintain proper distance, but she could not bring herself to move. "Zachary." He looked up at her, his blue eyes intense. "I have been wanting to talk to you about something, Clara. I know you have only been here a month, and maybe it is too soon, but I cannot keep quiet any longer." Clara's heart began to pound. "What is it?" "I care about you," Zachary said simply. "From the moment I saw you in that saloon, scrubbing that floor with your hands bleeding and your spirit unbroken, I felt something I have never felt before. These past weeks, getting to know you, watching you laugh with Mrs. Jenkins, seeing you heal and become stronger, it has only made those feelings deeper. I know I am probably overstepping, and if you want me to back off, I will. But I had to tell you. I had to let you know that you mean something to me, something important." Clara stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "I am just a serving girl," she whispered. "A nobody with nothing to my name." "You are not a nobody," Zachary said fiercely, squeezing her hand gently. "You are the strongest, most courageous woman I have ever met. You survived things that would have broken most people. You kept your dignity and your kindness even when the world was cruel to you, and I would be honored, truly honored, if you would allow me to court you properly." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "I care about you too," she admitted. "I've been trying not to because it seemed impossible that you could feel the same way. But I do, Zachary. I care about you so much it scares me." Zachary stood, pulling her gently to her feet. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Don't be scared. I promise I will never hurt you, never treat you the way you were treated before. You deserve to be cherished, Clara Hawthorne, and if you will let me, I would like to be the man who cherishes you." "Yes," Clara breathed. "Yes, I would like that." Zachary smiled, a brilliant, joyful expression that transformed his face. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she did not, when she instead rose up on her toes to meet him, he kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. It was Clara's first real kiss, and it was everything she had never dared to dream about. Gentle and sweet, full of promise and unspoken emotion. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. Clara laughed, a sound of pure happiness. "I am glad you finally did." They sat back down, but this time Zachary pulled his chair closer, keeping hold of her hand. They talked as the sun finished setting and the stars began to appear, sharing stories and dreams and hopes for the future. Clara told him about her childhood, about her father's struggle with consumption, about the fear and loneliness of being completely alone in the world. Zachary shared his own memories, the pain of losing his mother, the responsibility he felt toward his family and the ranch, his dreams of building something lasting and good. When the evening chill finally drove them inside, Zachary walked Clara to the stairs that led to her room. He kissed her hand, his lips brushing the newly healed skin, and looked into her eyes with such warmth that Clara felt it down to her soul. "Good night, Clara. Sleep well." "Good night, Zachary." Clara practically floated up the stairs. She lay in bed for a long time, reliving every moment of the evening, hardly able to believe her life had changed so dramatically in such a short time. The next morning, Nathan Nichols pulled Clara aside after breakfast. She tensed, worried that somehow he disapproved of her relationship with Zachary, but his weathered face was kind. "Zach told me he has asked to court you proper," Nathan said. "I want you to know you have my blessing. You are a good woman, Clara, and you have been good for my son." "I have not seen him smile this much in years. Just wanted you to know you have my support, and Mrs. Jenkins's too. She has been hoping you two would figure things out." "Thank you, Mr. Nichols," Clara said, relief flooding through her. "That means a great deal to me. Call me Nathan, girl. We are going to be family, I suspect. Might as well get comfortable with it now." Over the following months, Clara and Zachary's courtship blossomed. Zachary took every opportunity to spend time with her, whether it was riding out to check on the cattle together, sitting on the porch in the evening, or stealing moments in the kitchen while she cooked. He was attentive and romantic, always finding small ways to show he cared. Clara had never been happier. The constant fear and exhaustion that had defined her life for so long faded away, replaced by joy and hope. She grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. Her hands fully healed, leaving barely a trace of the damage they had sustained. She put on healthy weight, and color returned to her cheeks. Her eyes, which had been dull with despair, now sparkled with life. Mrs. Jenkins watched over them like a benevolent guardian, always making sure they had time together, but also maintaining propriety. The older woman was delighted by the romance, often telling Clara how perfect she and Zachary were for each other. One afternoon in early autumn, about 6 months after Clara had arrived at the ranch, Zachary asked her to ride out with him. They took Copper, Clara sitting in front of Zachary this time, his arms around her as he held the reins. He guided them to a spot overlooking a valley where oak trees provided shade and a small creek burbled over smooth stones. "This is beautiful," Clara said as Zachary helped her down. "It is my favorite spot on the ranch," Zachary admitted. "I come here when I need to think, or when I just want some peace. I have wanted to share it with you for a while now." They settled on a blanket Zachary had brought, sitting close together and looking out over the valley. The autumn air was crisp and clean, and the leaves on the oaks were just beginning to turn gold. "Clara, I need to ask you something," Zachary said after a few moments of comfortable silence. Clara turned to look at him, her heart beginning to race at the serious tone in his voice. Zachary took her hands in his, holding them carefully. He looked down at them for a moment, running his thumbs over her palms, now smooth and healthy. When he looked back up at her, his eyes were bright with emotion. "You remember the first night I brought you here? When your hands were raw from scrubbing floors?" Clara nodded, wondering where he was going with this. "I told you then that I could not just walk away, that I had to help you. But the truth is, it was more than that even then. Something in my heart recognized you, knew you were important. These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life, Clara. You have brought light and joy to this house, to my father and brothers, to Mrs. Jenkins, but especially to me. I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore. I don't want to imagine it." Zachary reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring. It was simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small ruby set in the center. "This was my mother's ring," Zachary said, his voice thick with emotion. "My father gave it to me years ago, told me to save it for the woman I wanted to marry. Clara Hawthorne, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Will you marry me?" Clara could barely see him through her tears. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, Zachary, I will marry you." Zachary slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that took her breath away. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, Zachary held her close. "I love you, Clara. I will spend every day of my life making sure you know how precious you are to me." "I love you too," Clara whispered against his chest. "I never thought I could be this happy. I never thought I deserved to be." "You deserve everything good in this world," Zachary said firmly. He pulled back and cupped her face in his hands, looking at her intently. "Promise me you will never doubt that. Promise me you will always remember how much you are worth." "I promise," Clara said. "As long as you are beside me, I think I can believe it." They spent the rest of the afternoon at the creek, making plans for their future. They decided on a simple wedding at the ranch, with just family and a few close friends. Clara wanted Mrs. Jenkins to stand with her, and Zachary would have his brothers beside him. They talked about where they would live, deciding that they would build a small house on the ranch property so they could have privacy, but still be close to the family. When they returned to the ranch house that evening, the news of their engagement was met with joy. Nathan shook Zachary's hand and pulled Clara into a gruff hug, welcoming her officially to the family. Marcus and Samuel congratulated them with genuine warmth. Mrs. Jenkins cried happy tears and immediately began planning the wedding feast. The next few months passed in a blur of preparations. Clara sewed her wedding dress with Mrs. Jenkins's help, a simple but elegant cream-colored gown. The men began building the small house Zachary had promised, working on it in their spare time. It was to be a surprise for Clara, who was not allowed to see it until it was finished. Clara wrote to the few people from her past who might care, distant cousins and old family friends. She received a handful of replies, most wishing her well. A few agreed to make the journey for the wedding. It touched Clara deeply that even these tenuous connections had not been completely severed. As the winter approached, the little house was completed. Zachary blindfolded Clara and led her to it, his excitement palpable. When he removed the blindfold, Clara gasped. It was perfect. A charming two-room cabin with a stone fireplace, large windows that would let in plenty of light, and a covered porch. Inside, the main room served as both kitchen and living space, furnished with a handsome table and chairs, a rocking chair by the fireplace, and shelves for books and dishes. The bedroom had a large bed with a beautiful quilt Mrs. Jenkins had made, a wardrobe, and a dresser with a mirror. "It is wonderful," Clara breathed, turning in a circle to take it all in. "Zachary, it is absolutely wonderful. You really like it?" Zachary asked, looking pleased but anxious for her approval. "I love it. I love you. I cannot wait to start our life together here." The wedding was held on a clear December day in 1882. The temperature was cool but not uncomfortable, perfect weather for the outdoor ceremony they had planned. Clara wore her cream dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Zachary had ridden into the hills to find for her. Zachary wore his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes never leaving Clara as she walked toward him across the ranch yard. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. A traveling preacher who sometimes served the area performed the service. Nathan stood tall and proud, giving Clara away with a gentle kiss on her forehead. Mrs. Jenkins wept through the entire ceremony. Marcus and Samuel stood beside their brother, both grinning broadly. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Zachary kissed Clara with such tenderness and joy that several people in the small gathering wiped away tears. Clara felt like her heart might burst from happiness. She was married. She was loved. She had a home and a family. After so many years of struggle and loneliness, she had found her place in the world. The celebration afterward was joyful and lively. Mrs. Jenkins had outdone herself with the feast, preparing all of Clara's favorite dishes. There was music and dancing, laughter and toasts. As the sun began to set, Zachary and Clara slipped away from the celebration, hand in hand, walking toward their new home. Inside, a fire already burned in the fireplace, courtesy of Mrs. Jenkins, who had prepared everything for them. Zachary closed the door behind them, then turned to Clara. In the firelight, his face was soft with love. "Hello, Mrs. Nichols," he said, pulling her close. Clara smiled, loving the sound of her new name. "Hello, husband." They stood together in the firelight, holding each other, both overwhelmed by the enormity of this moment. Then Zachary bent and kissed her, and Clara lost herself in the warmth and promise of his embrace. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, full of whispered words and gentle touches. Zachary was patient and loving, making sure Clara felt safe and cherished. When they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Clara knew she had found something she had never expected to have: a true partner, a real home, and a love that would last a lifetime. The first year of their marriage was full of joy and adjustment. Clara settled into her role as Zachary's wife, learning to manage their little household while still helping Mrs. Jenkins at the main house. Zachary was attentive and affectionate, never letting a day pass without telling Clara he loved her or finding some way to show it. They faced challenges, of course. Ranch life was hard, and there were times when money was tight or the weather threatened the cattle or illness swept through the herd. But they faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. In the spring of 1884, Clara realized she was pregnant. The news filled her with both joy and terror. She had lost her own mother young and had no real memory of pregnancy or childbirth. But Mrs. Jenkins was there to guide her, sharing her wisdom and experience. Zachary was over the moon with excitement, already planning for the nursery they would add to their little house. Clara's pregnancy was relatively smooth, though she tired easily and suffered from morning sickness in the early months. Zachary was endlessly patient, bringing her tea when she felt ill, rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings, and constantly telling her how beautiful she looked. On a cold January morning in 1885, Clara went into labor. Mrs. Jenkins and a midwife from town attended her, while Zachary paced outside with his father and brothers. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Clara feared she would not survive. But Mrs. Jenkins held her hand and encouraged her, and finally, after nearly 20 hours, Clara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When they placed the baby in her arms, Clara wept with joy and relief. He was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same blue as his father's. Zachary was allowed in, and when he saw his son for the first time, he broke down completely, tears streaming down his face. "He is beautiful," Zachary whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "You are beautiful. Thank you, Clara. Thank you for this gift." They named him Nathan Joseph Nichols, after Zachary's father and Clara's late father. Nathan Sr. was deeply touched by the honor, and baby Nathan became the joy of the entire ranch. Everyone doted on him, from his grandfather to his uncles to Mrs. Jenkins, who claimed him as her honorary grandson. Clara threw herself into motherhood with the same determination she had applied to surviving her years of hardship. She nursed Nathan, sang to him, played with him, and watched in wonder as he grew and developed. Zachary was a devoted father, coming home from the range to spend time with his son, rocking him to sleep in the evenings, and helping with the night feedings even though he had to be up early for work. When Nathan was 2 years old, Clara became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy felt easier even though she was chasing after an energetic toddler. In the autumn of 1887, she gave birth to a daughter they named Elena Marie, called Ellie for short. Ellie had Clara's hazel eyes and a sunny disposition that charmed everyone who met her. The little house, which had seemed so perfect for a newlywed couple, was now bursting at the seams. Zachary and his brothers built an addition, adding 2 bedrooms and expanding the main living area. The project took several months, but when it was done, the house was comfortable and spacious enough for their growing family. Life settled into a busy but happy rhythm. Clara managed the household, raised the children, and helped with the ranch when needed. Zachary continued to work hard, but he always made time for his family, never letting work consume him the way it had consumed his father in the years after his mother died. In 1890, Clara gave birth to their 3rd child, another son they named Thomas. Tommy was a quiet, thoughtful baby who seemed content to watch the world around him with serious dark eyes. With 3 children under the age of 6, Clara's days were full and exhausting, but she would not have traded them for anything. As the children grew, Clara made sure to teach them about gratitude and kindness. She told them stories about her own difficult past, about how their father had rescued her from a terrible situation, and about the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their station in life. Nathan grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved helping his father and grandfather with the ranch work. Ellie was bright and curious, always asking questions and wanting to learn everything about everything. Tommy was gentle and artistic, preferring to draw and read rather than play rough games. One evening in the summer of 1893, when Nathan was 8, Ellie was 6, and Tommy was 3, the family gathered on the porch of their house after dinner. The children played in the yard while Clara and Zachary sat together on the porch swing, watching them. "Can you believe it has been 11 years since I walked into that saloon and saw you scrubbing floors?" Zachary said, his arm around Clara's shoulders. Clara leaned into him, comfortable and content. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Other times it feels like yesterday. Do you ever regret it, leaving with me that night?" Clara turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "Never, not for a single moment. You saved my life, Zachary. You gave me everything I never dared to dream about." Zachary kissed her forehead. "You saved mine too, you know. I was going through the motions, doing what was expected, but I was not really living, not until I found you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. Nathan was teaching Ellie how to rope a fence post, while Tommy sat nearby making a crown of wildflowers. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and the air was full of the sounds of evening on the ranch. "I want to show you something," Zachary said suddenly. He stood and called to the children. "Stay in the yard where we can see you. Your mama and I will be right back." He led Clara into the house and to their bedroom. From the top shelf of the wardrobe, he pulled down a small wooden box she had never seen before. "What is that?" Clara asked. "Something I have been meaning to give you for a long time, but the moment never seemed right. I think now is the time." Zachary opened the box and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is the deed to our house and the 10 acres surrounding it. I had my father draw up the papers years ago, but I have been waiting for the right moment to give it to you." Clara stared at him, not understanding. "But it is already our house. It is in both our names now," Zachary explained. "Legally, you own it as much as I do. If something were to happen to me, you and the children would be secure. You would never have to worry about being alone or destitute again. This land, this house, it is yours, Clara, forever." Clara took the deed with shaking hands, tears blurring her vision. "Zachary." He cupped her face in his hands, the same gesture he had used that first night when he told her he cared for her. "I told you once that you deserved to be cherished. I meant it then, and I mean it now. I want you to always feel safe, always know that you have a place in this world that is truly yours." Clara threw her arms around him, holding him tight. "I love you so much. I cannot believe how blessed I am." "I am the blessed one," Zachary murmured into her hair. "Every day with you is a gift." They stood together in their bedroom, holding each other close, while the sounds of their children's laughter drifted in through the window. It was a perfect moment, a crystallization of everything they had built together. The years continued to pass, each bringing its own joys and challenges. There were good years when the cattle thrived and the money was plentiful, and hard years when drought or disease threatened everything. Through it all, Clara and Zachary faced life together, their love deepening with each passing season. Nathan grew into a tall, serious young man who was a natural with cattle and horses. Ellie became a bright, determined girl with a talent for numbers who helped Samuel with the ranch accounts. Tommy discovered a gift for drawing and painting, capturing the beauty of ranch life in ways that amazed everyone who saw his work. In 1898, Nathan Sr. passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72. His death hit the family hard, but they took comfort in the fact that he had lived to see his grandchildren grow and had been surrounded by love right up to the end. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, and the family often visited his grave to tell him about their lives and remember the man who had built so much from so little. Mrs. Jenkins retired a few years later, moving into a cottage on the ranch property that the family built specifically for her. She remained a beloved part of the family until her own peaceful passing in 1905. As Clara entered her 40s, she often reflected on the journey her life had taken. From the desperate, abused serving girl scrubbing floors with raw, bleeding hands, to a respected rancher's wife with a loving family and a secure home, the transformation still amazed her. She never forgot where she had come from, never took her blessings for granted. One day in 1906, as Clara helped Zachary in the garden behind their house, she paused to rest, her hands resting on her hips. They were older now, both in their mid-40s, but still healthy and strong. Zachary straightened from the row he had been weeding and came over to her, concern on his face. "You all right?" he asked. Clara smiled and held out her hands. They were dirty from the garden, the nails rimmed with soil, but they were strong and healthy. "I was just thinking about the first time you saw my hands. Do you remember?" Zachary took her hands in his, brushing away some of the dirt. "I remember everything about that night. How could I forget? They were so raw, so damaged. I thought they would never heal properly. I thought I was permanently marked by that life." Clara looked up at him. "But you kissed them and told me no more serving." You changed my entire world with those words." Zachary raised her hands to his lips, kissing each palm gently, just as he had done all those years ago. "You changed my world too. You gave me a reason to be more than just a cowboy working the range. You gave me a home, a real home, not just a house. You gave me children and joy and a purpose beyond just surviving." "We gave each other a second chance," Clara said softly. "And we made the most of it," Zachary agreed. He pulled her close, and they stood together in the garden, the same way they had stood on the porch so many years ago. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. Young Nathan, now 21, was courting a girl from town, a sweet-natured young woman named Rebecca, who Clara approved of wholeheartedly. Ellie, 19, had announced her intention to become a teacher, much to everyone's delight. Tommy, 16, was already selling his artwork and talking about going to San Francisco to study at an art school. "Our children are growing up," Clara observed. "Soon they will have lives of their own, families of their own." "That is as it should be," Zachary said. "We raised them right, taught them to be strong and kind and independent, but they will always come back. This ranch, this family, it is in their blood." He was right. Over the next few years, as the children did indeed leave home to pursue their own paths, they always returned. Nathan married Rebecca in 1908 and brought her to live on the ranch, where they eventually built their own house and started their own family. Ellie became a teacher in Paso Robles but lived at home, riding into town each day. Tommy went to San Francisco to study art, but came back every summer, and eventually moved back permanently, setting up a studio on the ranch where he painted and took commissions. Clara and Zachary became grandparents in 1909, when Nathan and Rebecca had a son. More grandchildren followed, a growing tribe of youngsters who filled the ranch with noise and laughter. Clara loved being a grandmother, spoiling the children in ways she had never been able to spoil her own kids during the leaner years. In 1915, Clara and Zachary celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary. The entire family gathered for a party, with children and grandchildren and friends from all over the region attending. As Clara stood on the porch of the main ranch house, watching the celebration in the yard below, she felt Zachary come up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Happy anniversary, my love," he murmured in her ear. "Happy anniversary," Clara replied, leaning back against him. 33 years. Where did the time go? Into building this, Zachary gestured to the scene before them. Into raising our children, loving each other, creating a legacy. I would not change a single moment of it. Clara turned in his arms to face him. At 55 and 58, respectively, they both bore the marks of age. Zachary's dark hair was now heavily streaked with silver, and lines creased his face. Clara's own hair had turned gray, and she had put on weight over the years. But when she looked at him, she still saw the handsome cowboy who had walked into a saloon and changed her life forever. "I love you, Zachary Nichols. I have loved you from the moment you stood up to that drunk man and defended me. I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you, Clara Nichols. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, the very best thing." They kissed, long and sweet, while around them their family celebrated. It was a perfect moment in a life full of perfect moments, a testament to the power of love to heal and transform. As the sun began to set on that anniversary celebration, Clara found herself thinking about the girl she had once been. That desperate, frightened young woman scrubbing floors in a saloon with raw, bleeding hands. She had been so certain that life would never get better, that she was destined for hardship and pain. But she had been wrong. One moment of kindness, one cowboy with a good heart, had changed everything. Zachary had seen past her circumstances to the person she truly was. He had offered her not just rescue but partnership, not just safety but love, and together they had built something extraordinary. The years continued their steady march. Clara and Zachary grew older, their hair turning white, their steps slowing, but their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and experience into something unbreakable. They faced losses along the way. Marcus passed away in 1920 from pneumonia, leaving behind a wife and 3 children who the family rallied around. Samuel followed in 1923, his heart giving out suddenly one morning. Each loss hurt, but Clara and Zachary supported each other through the grief, their bond proving strong enough to weather any storm. They also celebrated triumphs. Nathan took over full management of the ranch and proved to be as skilled and dedicated as his father and grandfather before him. Ellie married a fellow teacher and had 2 children of her own. Tommy's artwork gained recognition, and he eventually had an exhibition in San Francisco that was praised by critics. The ranch continued to thrive, adapting to changing times while maintaining its core values. It remained a place of hard work and family, of tradition and love. In 1930, Clara and Zachary celebrated their 48th wedding anniversary surrounded by 3 children, 11 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. It was a smaller, quieter celebration than some of the earlier ones, as both Clara and Zachary were now in their 70s and tired more easily. But it was no less joyful. That evening, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Clara and Zachary sat together on the porch of their house, just as they had done countless times over the decades. The summer air was warm, and stars filled the sky above them. "You remember what I told you the night we met?" Zachary asked, his voice still strong despite his age. "You said many things that night," Clara replied, her hand clasped in his. "I told you that you should not have to keep serving, that your hands should not be raw and bleeding. I kissed them and promised you no more of that life." Zachary lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm just as he had done so many times over the years. "Did I keep that promise, Clara? Did I give you the life you deserved?" Clara felt tears slip down her weathered cheeks. "You gave me more than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me love, family, security, and purpose. You gave me a life worth living. Yes, Zachary, you kept your promise. You kept it every single day." Zachary pulled her close, and they sat together in the darkness, 2 souls who had found each other against all odds and had created something beautiful together. Their story was not one of grand adventures or dramatic events. It was simply the story of 2 people who loved each other deeply and built a life on that foundation. As the years passed and they grew even older, that love remained constant. When Zachary's health began to fail in his late 70s, Clara nursed him with the same tenderness he had always shown her. When Clara developed arthritis that made her hands ache, Zachary was there to help her with tasks that had become difficult. They grew old together, their love maturing into something even more precious than it had been in their youth. They had survived hardship, celebrated joy, raised children, and built a legacy. And through it all, they had never stopped cherishing each other. On a warm spring day in 1935, Clara and Zachary celebrated their 53rd wedding anniversary. Zachary was 78 years old, Clara 75. They were both frail now, their bodies worn out from decades of hard work and living. But their minds were still sharp, and their love was still strong. The family gathered once again, though it was a smaller celebration as many of the grandchildren had moved away to pursue their own lives. But Nathan was there with Rebecca, and Ellie came with her husband, and Tommy never left the ranch, so he was always present. The great-grandchildren ran around the yard, their laughter echoing across the ranch. As the sun set that evening, Zachary and Clara sat on their porch one last time. They did not speak much, having long since reached the point where words were often unnecessary. They simply sat together, hands clasped, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Thank you," Clara said softly, "for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for loving me when I felt unlovable, for giving me a life I never thought I could have." "Thank you," Zachary replied, his voice rough with emotion, "for saying yes, for trusting me, for building this life with me, for being my partner in all things." They sat in silence for a while longer, then Zachary turned to her. "Clara, I want you to know something. If I had my life to live over again, I would not change a single thing. I would walk into that saloon, I would see you scrubbing floors with your hands raw, and I would bring you home with me. I would court you and marry you and build this life with you all over again. You are the best decision I ever made." Clara was crying now, tears streaming down her lined face. "And you are mine. You saved me, Zachary, in every way a person can be saved." They kissed, slow and gentle, a kiss that held 53 years of love and devotion. When they pulled apart, they simply sat together, watching the stars come out one by one, content in the knowledge that they had lived well and loved deeply. Zachary passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months later. Clara woke one morning to find him still and quiet beside her, his face peaceful. The grief was overwhelming, losing her partner of more than 5 decades. But Clara took comfort in knowing that Zachary had lived a full, happy life, and that their love had been real and lasting. Clara lived another 3 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She spent those years sharing stories about Zachary, making sure the younger generations understood what an extraordinary man he had been. She told them about the night he walked into the saloon and changed her life, about his kindness and strength and unwavering love. On a quiet autumn evening in 1938, Clara passed away in her sleep, in the house Zachary had built for her so many years ago. She was 78 years old, and her last conscious thought was of Zachary, waiting for her somewhere beyond this life. The family laid Clara to rest beside Zachary on the hill overlooking the ranch, next to his father and mother. A simple stone marked their graves, inscribed with their names and the dates of their lives. But their true legacy was not in the stone. It was in the thriving ranch, the large family, and the countless lives they had touched with their kindness and love. Years later, when the great-grandchildren asked about Clara and Zachary, they were told the story. The story of a desperate young woman with raw hands and a kind cowboy who could not look away. The story of a love that transformed 2 lives and created a family. The story of how one moment of compassion changed everything. And so their legacy lived on, passed down through the generations, a testament to the power of love, the importance of kindness, and the truth that everyone deserves to be cherished. Clara had started with nothing but pain and hardship. Zachary had given her a chance at something better. Together, they had built a life that mattered, a love that lasted, and a family that would carry their values forward long after they were gone. The ranch continued to thrive, managed by Nathan and then by his children. The little house where Clara and Zachary had started their married life was preserved as a memorial, filled with mementos of their life together. Young couples in the family often went there to remember the love story that had started it all, to draw inspiration from the devotion Clara and Zachary had shown each other. The story of Clara's raw hands and Zachary's kiss became family legend, told and retold with reverence and joy. It was a reminder that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that kindness could change lives, and that the right partner could transform hardship into happiness. And so, in the end, Clara Hawthorne Nichols got her happy ending. Not because life became easy, but because she found someone who saw her worth and chose to cherish her. Not because all her problems disappeared, but because she had a partner to face them with. Not because she never felt pain again, but because she experienced so much joy that it outweighed all the suffering that had come before. She had been a serving girl with raw hands, scrubbing floors in a saloon, invisible and forgotten by the world. But a cowboy had seen her, had kissed those damaged hands, and had said no more serving. He had kept that promise for 53 years, giving her a life of love and respect and partnership. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all. The Rocking N Ranch stood as a monument to their love, acres of California land where cattle still grazed and horses still ran, where children still played and families still gathered, where the values Clara and Zachary had embodied, kindness, hard work, devotion, and love, were still honored and passed down. On quiet evenings when the sun set over the valley and the stars began to appear, you could almost feel their presence still. In the whisper of the wind through the oak trees, in the gentle creak of the porch swing, in the warmth of the house they had built together. Clara and Zachary were gone, but their love remained, woven into the very fabric of the ranch, an eternal testament to what two people could build when they chose to love each other completely. And that was how it should be. That was the happy ending they had earned, not in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in the quiet, steady devotion of a lifetime spent together. In raw hands that had healed with tender care, in a kiss that had promised better days, in a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their legacy secure. Clara and Zachary Nichols had lived well, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. What more could anyone ask for?